Morning. Good morning. Lift up your hearts and give thanks, for today is a day to celebrate. Let us be awakened to it and be glad. Let us count the many gifts that life has given us. May we be grateful for the capacity to see, feel, hear, and understand. May we be grateful for the incredible gift of life. And may we be especially grateful for the ties of love which bind us together, giving dignity, meaning, worth, and joy to all of our days. Love is the spirit of His church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. And I'm a student minister here. If you're a guest today, we especially want to welcome you. If you're joining us on the live stream, which does not apply here, well, I hope they enjoyed it too. I really do need to redact these before I start reading them. Please note that there are many ways to engage with us. If you do happen to ever watch online, we have Facebook, Twitter, live streaming, orders of service, and you can even contribute online. So if you are ever sick at home and still want to participate, you can do that in all the ways. If you are with us today, and you're new here, please fill out a Connect card and return it to the welcome table in the foyer, where you will receive a DVD with lots of great information about our church. You can also drop it in the offering plate when it comes around. On July 21st, we are hosting the Faith and Freedom event here. It's actually hosted by the Oklahoma Religious Coalition for Reproductive Choice, and All Souls is part of that coalition, and glad to provide the space. You can also support All Souls Youth and get your car cleaned. Just park and enjoy the services. That's today until 1 p.m. and it goes to support the Seniors Spirit Quest trip, which is an important part of their spiritual development and launching into the world of adulthood. Make sure you don't miss our inaugural issue of Beyond Belief, formerly Simple Gifts, out next month. That is actually an online issue. And please let us know if you have a coffee shop, yoga studio, or doctor's office that would enjoy reading about our message of Love Beyond Belief. You can sign up to have that distributed at communications@allsoulschurch.org. And we actually have short announcements today. So with that, I will move us to the offering. Every time we gather in worship, we give away our offering plate, or worship, or community, as the case may be here. We give away our offering plate to organizations in our community that support our values. If you are wanting to give directly to the church, you can use the envelope on your seat to designate offerings to All Souls specifically. But I do hope you will give generously today, because we're giving it to Youth Services of Tulsa, a favorite organization of mine in the community. I worked for them for a time and continue to be connected with them. They do amazing work for our at-risk youth in the community with services like sexual health. We have an at-risk shelter for kids who are runaways, who are going away from an abusive situation, who are homeless, etc., homeless outreach. LGBT group, counseling services for families and kids, sliding scale. It's a wonderful organization, so please support their work. saw this video and was told the story around it by Reverend Sekou. Who's heard of Reverend Sekou? He's involved with the Black Lives Matter movement in Ferguson, St. Louis. All right, well, if you don't know about Sekou, you need to know about Sekou. He is the people's clergy person in Ferguson and in the Black Lives Matter movement in general, but particularly in Ferguson because he's from St. Louis. And I had the privilege to spend a week with Reverend Sekou at the beginning of June, sorry. We're not in August yet. At the beginning of June, I spent a week with some seminary colleagues and Reverend Sekou and his friend and coordinator from the Fellowship of Reconciliation, which is an organization based out of New York that's been doing justice work and conflict work for many years, came actually out of some work after World War II. And I tell you all of that to give you a little bit about who Reverend Sekou is. He's spoken at the UUA's General Assembly the last 2 years. He is on the forefront of anti-racist organizing and nonviolent movements in the tradition of Martin Luther King. And you're going to see Reverend Sekou on this video. He will be the 5'2" black man standing on top of a table in this video. And he is a powerhouse of a person. You can feel the energy and the passion that he brings to this work in his very presence. Now, this video is actually not about Reverend Sekou, but I want you to know who's speaking in it. This video is showing you something that happened in St. Louis at LOVEBB's coffee shop, which is a locally owned coffee shop that I visited multiple times. It's owned and operated by a pair of lesbian sisters who have been very active in queer liberation movements and supportive of anti-racist work. And on the porch of their coffee shop, there were a group of protesters gathered after a peaceful protest. And just before the filming started here, a line of police in riot gear, full riot gear, showed up across the street. So from this stage to the back of the hall here, showed up and formed a line and started beating their batons on the ground. Over and over again. Now, this is known as agitation. It's a well-known police tactic. The police officers in Alabama, in Selma, used this tactic along with fire hoses and dogs. This is something we've seen before. And this is Reverend Sekou's response with the protesters.
So I'm asking you all to please listen. Our first view is for everybody to be safe.
Our first view is for everybody to be safe.
I need you to be safe first.
I need you to be safe first.
Do not engage them.
Do not engage them.
Arguing with them gets nowhere. So do not engage them. Now our presence is enough
Our
to
presence is
agitate
enough
them.
to agitate
So
them.
this is what I need you to do. All right? I need you to lock on, all of you. Lock on.
Lock arms.
Baby, lock my arm, girl.
So lock arms. So I ain't like with nothing else we can't really go nowhere, so we might as well get to know each other. So I need you to lock arms. Okay? Now, step 2. I'm making this up as I go along.
Making this up as I go along, this is.
We have already won. They don't do that when we're losing. We've already won. And the way we continue to win is to be in solidarity with each other and not engage in banter with them. We've already won. When they bring that out, That's because we've won already.
Yeah.
I know you want to clap it, but don't clap it. Everybody knows their heart, right? Tell me, what does a heartbeat sound like?
Yeah.
He asked what a heartbeat sound like, and so they went.
On a normal day. On a normal day. All right? On a normal day, your heart goes. Now, you can unlock your arms. No. Just your heart. That's all. You're on the wrong side of history. Woo! And we have already won. We are peacefully gathered here in the tradition of Martin Luther King, Gandhi. This multiracial gathering is possible because of nonviolence. And that is the heartbeat of democracy that you hear. And so whoever your captain is, stand down.
Go ahead now.
Go home.
Go ahead now.
We'll be all right. I need you to get home safe. So just chill out for a minute. Go give Mo some of your money. Mo's been good to us.
Yes, he is.
Let him. We want him to go, and then we go.
As we go into silence, I want you to find your heartbeat. Find it on your wrist, find it in your neck, find it right here, wherever you can feel it the best. Put your fingers together, you can feel your pulse there. Find your heartbeat. Close your eyes, if you feel comfortable doing so. We have no transitions in our immediate community this week, but we have many transitions in the world at large. We lost 7 lives that we know of, 8 lives that we know of to white supremacy this week. Alton Sterling, Philando Castile, Officer Lorna Aarons, Officer Michael Smith, Officer Michael Kroll, Officer Patrick Zamaripa, Officer Brent Thompson, and Michael Xavier Johnson. In the past 7 months since this year began, at least 115 people of color have died in officer-related shootings all across the country. There are elements that would like to hit the fight for Black lives and the good work that police officers are supposed to do against each other. And this is a false distinction. The heartbeat that you're finding, you still got your heartbeat? That's the truth. Now sit with that.
Who's gonna be there after you fall? Who's gonna be there after you fall? Your resilience so brilliant, yet you stand strong, but this pain you feel, never thought that a hurt could be so deep, and a trust for you has new meaning. After you fall, who's gonna be there after you fall? We're gonna be there after you fall. We're gonna care for you after it's all gone. Alone you wanna stay, I know you feel so safe. It should go through place. They let evil bear the souls, take control. God has no home, and all the good that you do, they still want to keep you down. After you fall, we're gonna be there after you fall. We will bring justice after you fall. We will bring love, love, love after you fall. You see, darkness can't drive out darkness, only light can do that. You see, hate can't drive out hate, only love can do that. Don't you know that rain can't drive out the rain, only sunshine can do that. Pain can't drive out pain, only healing can do that. Will you be that light that shines so bright after they fall?
have a talk here. I had it ready 2 weeks ago when we chose our sermon topics for July and our talk topics for July. And the working title was Why Black Lives Matter to Me. And then after reviewing it 2 weeks ago, I thought that perhaps a better title for it and a better theme for this service was Dismantling White Supremacy, Moving from Head to Heart. And I might look at it, but a lot's happened since then. And I feel like the words that are on this page are not enough. The words that are on this page, though reflections of my heart, came from my head and tried to meet people on the head before bringing them to the heart, and we don't have time for that. We don't have time for this. We are way past this. We have been having the conversation about race and racial justice and injustice and violence and murder here for too long. And this is not going to change anything. This is our way of protecting ourselves from this, because this hurts. How many of you are hurting right now in the wake of this week? Keep them up. Look around. How many of you are hurting right now? We lost a lot of lives this week. And again, that we know of. Because when I told you that 115 or more people of color, African Americans specifically, have died by police shootings in the last 7 months, that didn't count Latinos, that didn't count Native Americans, that didn't count people of Asian descent, that didn't count people whose racial identification may have been undocumented. And that's a number, right? And numbers are here. Numbers don't really tell us anything about those people. Numbers don't tell us that the men who were killed in Baton Rouge and Minneapolis this week, that Alton Sterling was a 37-year-old father of 5, and that, yeah, he had a criminal record, but he wasn't performing any criminal activity at the time he was shot and killed. He had not drawn his gun. It fell out of his pocket after they killed him. And it doesn't tell you that Philando Castile was a 32-year-old college graduate who had been a successful and dedicated and beloved worker in the school system for the last 13, 14 years, that he was known as Mr. Phil by the kids at his school, that he had no criminal record apart from the ones that I think most of us do. I know I have had warrants for traffic tickets that I forgot to pay or didn't have money for. And that he did everything that we are supposed to do when an officer pulls us over. He had a concealed carry, and the first thing he told the officer was he had a concealed carry and he had a permit. And what the officer is then supposed to say is, okay, thank you, show me your permit. What the officer instead did was point his gun at him. The number 115 also doesn't count a lot of other things. And when I'm talking about dismantling white supremacy, people close up. Because when we hear white supremacy, what do we think about? What images come to your mind? I actually want you to shout them out. What images come to your mind when you hear white supremacy? White robes, David Duke, KKK, pointy hats, burning crosses, lynchings. Now, I'm not saying those things don't happen, but that's just a small piece of what white supremacy looks like. White supremacy is not simply the overt belief that white people are better than people of other colors. White supremacy is the system of racial and economic oppression that has been set up over the last 500 years since Europeans started colonizing other places. And that is not to say that Europeans are bad people, that there have not been other instances throughout human history of groups taking over other groups, of colonizing occurring, of tribal wars, race wars, slavery. All of those things have existed throughout human history, but none have been as successful as the white supremacist system as we know it. Now stay with me here, because I'm starting in the head, because I have to on this one. White supremacy doesn't mean that the white people in this room think they are better than anyone else. It means that we cannot ignore the history that has brought us to where we are. It means that progress is important, that the end of slavery and the end of Jim Crow laws and the end of school segregation and the end of anti-miscegenation laws are progress, but they do not mean that we are there. Now, I lifted up other lives that were lost to white supremacy this week, and I named the 5 officers who died in Dallas. They were also lost to white supremacy. And Micah Johnson was lost to white supremacy before he picked up that gun and after. Dylan Roof, who killed 9 people in a Charleston church last summer, was lost to white supremacy. What white supremacy is, and when I talk about dismantling, what does dismantle mean? To take apart. So I want to take apart that term, and if you're having, and I know it brings visceral reactions, I know it makes you want to back up and say that has nothing to do with me. Please hear me out. I want you to get uncomfortable. Uncomfortable is good. Uncomfortable means you're feeling something. Uncomfortable means you're in your body. White supremacy is the system of oppression that has divorced people of all colors from our humanity systematically over the last 500 years. My European ancestors that bought and sold slaves or picked up African slaves from the coast of Africa had to be divorced from this right here to be able to do that to other human beings. And they had to divorce themselves from the humanity of the darker-hued people they were enslaving in order to do that to other human beings. And they had to convince themselves and the people that they were putting on the boats that they were less than, that they were not human. Fast forward a couple hundred years, and science started to be misused to say that there were inherent differences between races, which science now tells us is actually not true. That we are far more alike genetically than we are different. If I were to try to unpack the entirety of the white supremacist system, we would be here all day, and this is supposed to be a short service. So that's not going to happen. Saying that this current situation is a matter of black versus white, or Black Lives Matter versus police, is incorrect. It misses the point. The point is that unless we as a people are able to connect with the pain in our hearts, the pain in our hearts at the lives lost, regardless of color or reason, the pain in our hearts at the injustice of our systems, the pain in our hearts that people go hungry, the pain in our hearts that people are jailed unjustly, the pain in our hearts that our families struggle, that other families struggle, and stop blaming each other, we are not going to get to the real work. And white people, I'm looking at you here. I'm going to address you specifically for a second. I love you. I'm one of you. I do not hate being white. I do not think any of us should hate being white. I do think, I do know, I do feel that if my black brothers and sisters are angry right now, that's okay. That if my black friend does not feel like being hugged by me right now, that is okay. That not knowing what to do is okay. Because that's actually part of this system. That idea that in order to do something, we have to be perfect, we have to know everything, and we can't. White people once more. When it comes to discussing white supremacy, we have a lot at stake. We have a lot to lose. We have the illusion that everything is fine to lose. We have the illusion that the civil rights movement ended with Dr. King's death to lose. And I believe this is why we fight so hard against the idea that we have anything to do with it, that we have work to do. Why some of us argue so vehemently that all lives matter and that therefore Black Lives Matter is divisive. This is not about pitting black lives against anyone else's lives. This is saying that black lives are being taken and devalued at an alarming rate, and that in practice they do not matter, and that that is unjust, and that we have to feel that and we have to do something about it. This is why we minimize police killings of unarmed people of color, saying we don't really know what happened, or why we insist that we do not see color, or reject the idea that we may be even casually racist, or name our Black, Hispanic, Native American, mixed-race friends, who may in fact be people that we are friendly with, but maybe we only see them in passing at church or work, and we've never been in their homes, and they've never been in ours, but we have black friends. Now, if you fit this description, I am not calling you out. And people of color, I'm going to speak to you in a minute. Hold with me, please. If you as a white person fit the description I just made, I am not calling you out. I am not calling you bad or hypocritical. I am calling you into the conversation. I'm calling you to question why that is. I am calling you into the movement. I am calling you into the healing process, because that pain in your heart is real. And our ancestors have been ignoring it for hundreds of years, and we can choose to stop. Because I am that white person too. I have ingrained racism. I am embarrassed to admit that I have only a couple of black friends who have been in my home more than once. That I am guilty of making myself feel not racist by decrying the systemic sins of white supremacy as though they have nothing to do with me. That I struggle to overcome my training that black men are dangerous. That black women are either mammies or Jezebels every single day, because it's in the water, it's in the air I breathe, it's in the cultural consciousness that's been handed down and down and down, no matter what we say overtly. And I confess this because I'm in covenant with you, my congregation, to seek the truth in love. And that means speaking the truth in love. And this is the truth I must confess, that as much as my white cultural upbringing tells me I have to be perfect before I can participate in the solution, history shows me otherwise. I can't name a historical leader or moral authority who was without human failing. Gandhi abused his wife and children as a young man. Reformed violent criminals mentor young gang members. Sober alcoholics bring drunks to sobriety. It takes broken people to heal a broken world. So stop waiting to be perfect. To my hopeful friends of color in this room, I know you know that white culture exists. I know you know that white supremacy exists because you had to be fluent in it the moment you stepped out your door into a white world for the first time. Your parents had to school you in it in order for you to survive. You had to choose between honoring your cultural traditions and your blackness and passing in a white man's world so that maybe you wouldn't be Phil Castile, so that maybe you wouldn't be Alton Sterling. And I'm hearing from my black friends this week that this last death by the hands of police, that Phil Castile's death, murder, was the last straw because he played the game. He did everything he was supposed to do to not get shot, and he still got shot. And so, you've been waiting for us to be called in for a long time. You've been trying to call us in for a long time. And I say, white people, it is our turn to call each other in. Our black friends are tired. Our black friends are hurting. Our black friends are angry. And yes, we are mourning the deaths of those police officers. We are all mourning the deaths of those police officers because no life should be pitted against another. No life should be taken at the expense of another. But to take those 5 lives as evidence that the Black Lives Matter movement is wrong is to not see the forest for the trees. That this is part of what the Black Lives Matter movement is fighting. Wrapping up. 500 years of American racism have poisoned the well of cultural consciousness from which we have drunk. I have been robbed of my full humanity by all the ways that scientific and institutionalized racism remain in that water and tell me, without telling me, that my siblings of color are inferior, that they have failed to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, which, by the way, is a term because it is an impossible task. You can't do it. That as a lower middle class white man, I have more in common with the almost exclusively white rich elite than I do with the struggling middle and working class people of all races with whom I interact every day, and I am angry about it. I am sad about it,
It has kept me out of real relationship with too many wonderful people for too long, and I want that to stop. I want to work for your liberation. For your liberation and your liberation and your liberation and yours and yours and yours and all of you. I want to fight for your full humanity because I want to reclaim mine. I want to fight for your liberation because, as Lila Watson said, it is bound up with mine. Your liberation is bound up with mine. I am the inheritor of a tradition of white supremacy that has dehumanized an entire country and world for far too long, and I am accepting responsibility for creating a new tradition, a new system, one based on honoring differences, sharing humanity, and seeking and speaking truth in love together, no matter how much it hurts, and it will hurt, excruciatingly. I watched a man dying on Facebook this weekend. I watched his girlfriend crying. I watched his her daughter, to whom he was a father figure, trying to comfort her mommy because he was dying. That is a pain that will never go away, and I wasn't even there. I am hurting because someone was so overwhelmed by this system that he snapped and started shooting at a crowd and took out 5 police officers and injured several other people. I'm hurting for all of those families. And this pain, I need you to feel this with me. I need you to get into that pain. Don't check out. Don't get up in your heads. Get down in that pain, because it is the pain of healing. It is the pain that comes when you cut out a tumor that is threatening to take over your body. It is the pain of learning to move again as the tissue mends and the muscles adapt and the ligaments reposition. It is the pain born of too much tenderness. The pain that only attention, intention, direct action, and love will heal. And so I am inviting you to heal with me. And I'm committing to heal with you. Thank you. Scoot in. Seriously. Scoot in. gangrene, right? Take your foot and tap with me. This is called the heartbeat of democracy because, keep going, I can't tap and talk at the same time. This is called the heartbeat of democracy because democracy means of the people, government of the people, and we are the people. Not the people in Oklahoma City, in that white building, not the people in the Capitol in DC, although they are part of the people, but they are not the only people. We, the people, have the power. We, the people, connect here. And we take this and we have those messy conversations, and we are imperfect, and we meet in love, and we allow for anger, and we allow for fear, and we allow for everything to be as it is, but not allow it to stay as it is. So go forth and listen for this heartbeat in the world. Go forth and listen to this heartbeat for the people around you that you encounter. Go forth and listen for this heartbeat next time you see something on the news that gives you a knee-jerk reaction that you want to step away from or point fingers at. Meet here and go forward.